Hello again. A few people commenting here have picked up on the fact that I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East and also that I speak Hebrew. Surely that must mean at the very least that I'm a Jew and probably an agent of Shin Bet or the Mossad or I don't know, the Rothschilds or something. Sorry, I'm not any of those things. After the Six-Day War in 1967, it became quite the thing for people from around the world, including Britain, to spend time on a kibbutz in Israel. It was an early version of the gap year, although it wasn't actually called that. I'm thinking some of the people that went, like Boris Johnson, Helen Mirren, they're not Jews either, and as far as I know, they're not Zionist agents either. Anyway, some of the people stayed longer. They picked up Hebrew the way I did. It's just how things are. I want to look today at a misconception about Palestine because the British in particular want to forget their role in the problems in the Middle East. And since they actually created the problems that led to Palestinian refugee camps and the Arab-Israeli wars, it's worth looking and see just what they did there. If you ask most people where Palestine is, they'll tell you it's occupied roughly the same land as Israel, and that a lot of the trouble starts because two peoples are trying to occupy that same limited area of land, and that's why there's struggles between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and people take sides on those terms depending often upon whether they're left wing or right wing or pro-America or they're Christians and so on. It's all a lot of nonsense. There's no struggle for any land, or at least there shouldn't be. Well, there wouldn't be if the British hadn't meddled in the area. Until the end of the First World War, sorry, there was no such country as Palestine. There never had been. It was simply an area of the Ottoman Empire in the Eastern Mediterranean, and its borders were very vague. It was where we have modern day Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. That was generally regarded as Palestine. Um, After the end of the First World War, when the Ottoman Empire was being dismantled, the League of Nations decided to create some individual states, some individual countries in that area, and give European powers like France and Britain responsibility for looking after them. So on one of those areas was going to be Palestine. The League of Nations created a new country called Palestine, and they drew its borders, and Britain agreed faithfully to look after the interests of the people of Palestine and take care of it and help guide it towards statehood. Here is Palestine after the First World War. Straight away, when looking at this map, something strikes us. And we look at this huge new country of Palestine. It's much bigger than the modern day state of Israel, about 5 times the size. Most of it's desert. There's plenty of room for as many Arabs and Jews as want to live there. There's no crush for space. No one needs to be stealing each other's land or anything. There's masses of room. So what happened to it all? Who stole 80% of Palestine? Look again at the map and see what you think. Did the Jews seize it? I mean, where did it go? It seems to have vanished. 80% of Palestine is missing. Who's got it? During the First World War, the British, with Lawrence of Arabia, I'm sure that we've heard of him, managed to enlist the aid of some Arabs to fight against the Ottomans, not because the British particularly cared about the nationalist Arab aspirations of the Arabs, but they were useful idiots, they were useful people to have on side. So we promised the Arabs all sorts of wonderful things, and Lawrence of Arabia helped blow up Turkish troop trains and all the rest of it. Okay, after the end of the war, some of those people, the Hashemites, for example, were the custodians of the holy places in Mecca during the war and for generations before. They ended up getting chased out of Mecca by the Wahhabis, the present day Saudi family. And so you had these groups of wandering Bedouin with their own armies, the armies that they'd used to fight the Ottomans, and they decided if they couldn't have Mecca and they couldn't have their own country there, they would carve out kingdoms in somewhere else in the Middle East, which was going to cause frightful trouble for the British. Just imagine. Okay, what happened? One of those groups, wandering Bedouin, I suppose I shouldn't really call them brigands, but that's what they were, army of brigands rampaging around the eastern Mediterranean, were led by a man called Abdullah. He was a Hashemite Bedouin. He was born in Mecca. Here he is. With their usual knack of turning their problems into triumphs, the British decided that rather than let Abdullah rage around and take whatever he wanted, they would set him up with his own country, and that way they would have an ally in the eastern Mediterranean, which would be very useful. So all they did was decide to give Abdullah 80% of Palestine. They just chopped it off, roughly where the River Jordan runs now, and right the way through the middle of the Negev, and they handed it over to Abdullah and said, there you go, it's a new country, we'll call it Transjordan because it's mostly to the east of the Jordan. And that's what happened to 80% of Palestine. The British gave it away to a man who had never been to Palestine in his life, was born in Mecca, had no connections whatsoever with the country. And that's how Transjordan was formed. Later on, of course, Abdullah grabbed another great chunk of Palestine, what some people call the West Bank and some of us call Judea and Samaria. And then he declared himself king and renamed his country Jordan. The Palestinians were furiously angry with Abdullah for this, and in the end he was assassinated in the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. You can still see where one of the bullets struck a pillar there. Anyway, the Hashemites were very unpopular with the Palestinians. No one liked seeing the whole chunk of their land stolen, but we'll go into that on another occasion. The next time that you hear about Palestine, remember you're not talking about the area of Israel, which you can see here. You're actually talking about the area here, which is Mandate Palestine. Had the British not stolen 80% of Palestine like this and given it to a wandering bunch of Bedouin bandits to whom they owed a favour, then there would probably be no Arab-Israeli wars, no Palestinian refugee camps, no trouble at all. There would have been room for everybody and a lot of trouble would have been avoided. I mean, those things are all legacies of Britain's imperial policy in that part of the world.